Get done with this sooner rather than later so that you can relax on your vacation and don't have to think about it when you're on the beach.
The one recommendation I would give is that I think where I do think I could have done better on this is better prioritizing getting good sleep throughout the entirety of the study process. I think when I first started, I was a little overwhelmed by it, so I just wanted to you know, get that percentage number keep ticking up, so I knew I would be keeping pace. But then there were some of those concepts that, thinking back, was like I kind of have to go back and review them because they didn't quite crystallize in my mind as much. I think part of it is just because I was burning the candle at both ends a little bit.
Get an idea of, because it's not a one man or one person job, especially with such a tight timeline. I'll tell you, there will be a lot of people out there watching this who would want to replicate exactly what you did and take a band-aid approach, 1 month, 4 weeks, and just bulldoze through this and get it done. Good morning, Jesse.
Morning, Wasim. How are you?
How's it going? Good.
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be on the other side, so to speak.
Great. And your exam preparation journey is kind of unique, Jesse. You got the P Power exam done in first attempt and within a month,
Yeah.
right? So it's very impressive. And the approach that you took was a little bit unorthodox in terms of the level of effort you put in, the timeline obviously worked with, the intensity that you brought to this project. So I'd like to pick your brain as to how you went about it. And maybe even before we get started with the exact game plan, what was the motivating factor for you to get it done in such a short period of time?
Yeah. So I think when I posted about this in the forum, one of the things that I said was I don't know if I would necessarily recommend as aggressive as a timeline as I did, because it did add a layer of stress that maybe didn't need to be there, which I'm sure anyone guessed, you could probably guess that would be the case. But part of it was I took the FE exam, a few, what was it, like 6 months ago, something like that, 6, 9 months ago. And I was working with a coworker at the time who was also working towards that exam. And he was just like, I'm already in the mode of studying. I just want to get it done. And I was kind of like, yeah, kind of want to take a little bit of a break. I'm kind of done studying for a little while. But I kind of set a goal for myself. I was like, I'd like to have this done in like 9-ish months or something like that. And I talked about this with my wife. And then we actually moved partway through that. I was living in California at the time. I'm now back in Minnesota, where I'm from normally. And so during that time, it was kind of hectic, and I lost some of the motivation, or some of the, I guess not motivation, but like the inertia and the like sort of routine of studying and all that. So I kind of got back, and then we were all getting settled back in, seeing friends and family again, all that. So I kind of just like lost it. And then I was like, I still want to do this. And I'd kind of set like this timeline of like, I want to be done by February, which was kind of just arbitrary, honestly. But then by the time I was kind of really looking at it, I was like, gosh, I really do want to be done with this. We had set a vacation for that time, and I knew if I was going to push it past that, it's like, well, am I going to want to be thinking about it a lot while I'm on vacation? Am I going to lose some of the stuff that I had been, studying and learning just over a time where I'm like on a beach and trying not to think about PE power or just power in general, because I work as a power systems engineer as well. So it was kind of a number of factors. So it was somewhat arbitrary, honestly, but really it was just I knew that if I scheduled my test, I would force myself to like dig my heels in and get going. And once I did that, I was starting to look into the study material, and I found that it was very broad, right? There's so many things that you need to talk about. It's not like the FE as well, where it's like, well, there's 400 pages of equations, but you're pretty sure that they're not going to ask you anything outside of those 400 pages of equations. Like you can kind of get comfortable to an extent of like, okay, I understand the process of like know the handbook, know the general processes behind all of these, the general concepts behind all of these topics. But for PE Power, it was like I need to be a little bit more organized. So that's what actually led me to the course, and then I kind of tackled it from there. And we spoke early in the process on kind of coming up with a game plan. And once I felt like I had kind of an idea of the best way to handle it, then I just kind of went full systems go and started tackling it.
Right. No, in theory, on paper, and listening to it, it sounds like an amazing plan. Get done with this sooner rather than later so that you can relax on your vacation and don't have to think about it when you're on the beach, right? But those 25, 27, whatever, however number of days you essentially bulldoze through the course content, which is actually quite overwhelming if you're trying to tackle it within a month. And I looked at your progress. You completed about 90% of the course, which is good enough in terms of especially with the timeline that you're working with, and it delivered the results. You got the job done in the first attempt. So what was your daily routine during those 27, 25 days? What were the sacrifices you were making, and what was the kind of support that you were leaning on? You mentioned you were all sort of moving, you had recently moved and whatnot. So how did you sort of arrange all of those moving pieces of the puzzle to sort of optimize your studying?
Yeah, so typically my schedule was I would work, standard work day, 8 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever. Get done with that, get home, eat dinner quick, and then basically just start studying and working relatively late nights. Trying to still prioritize sleep because I do think that the one recommendation I would give is that I think where I do think I could have done better on this is better prioritizing getting good sleep throughout the entirety of the study process. I think when I first started, I was a little overwhelmed by it, so I just wanted to you know get that percentage number keep ticking up so I knew I would be keeping pace. But then there were some of those concepts that thinking back was like I kind of have to go back and review them because they didn't quite crystallize in my mind as much. I think part of it is just because I was burning the candle at both ends a little bit. Um, but it probably was 3 to 4 ish hours of studying on average a night. And then when it came to the weekends, then it was basically the weekend is just a study day or a big study day that I take a 10 hour long nap on Saturday night. So it was a definitely a grind, definitely a lot of time put in. I wanted to make sure that I did put in the time though. I didn't want to kind of go halfway on it to kind of put myself in a position that not only did I not put enough time into it, but I didn't put in enough effort either. And just rely on like, oh, hope you're a good test taker because otherwise you're gonna crash and burn. And then the other side of it is like I truly did want to like learn and become a better engineer from this. And that was the one thing I was kind of joking with some of my coworkers on is, they're going to be able to bill me at a higher rate now. And well, now I'm not going to be any better as an engineer once I have those 2 letters after my name. I'm just going to have taken a test. But then what I found is I do feel like I really became a better engineer. I have a much more solid grasp on a lot of these concepts. And so that was the thing that I do really value out of coming out of the other side of this is not only do I kind of have the confidence of knowing, hey, maybe you're not such an imposter in this world. You were able to pass this test that all of the other PEs passed, so you must be, reasonably smart. But then not only that, I actually feel more competent at my job too. So I think that was kind of I kind of took that off on a different tangent, but I kind of an extra benefit to the test. But yeah, the schedule itself was pretty much was pretty was quite a grind. I'm pretty thankful that my partner has been super supportive. So she kind of took on a bigger chunk of the role, just kind of with just helping me out cooking dinners and that sort of thing. Normally we were normally 50-50 on that, but that was a huge support. And she actually joked to her coworkers after I finished. She was like, "Well, I'm happy to now have my husband back because after he's been studying for the last 4 weeks or so." So that's kind of I'm lucky to have a support system there, but it was certainly a lot of time and effort on my part as well.
Yeah, that's amazing, Jesse, and that's exactly what I wanted to, you know, get an idea of, because it's not a one man or one person job, especially with such a tight timeline. I'll tell you, there will be a lot of people out there watching this who would want to replicate exactly what you did and take a band-aid approach, 1 month, 4 weeks, and just bulldoze through this and get it done. But again, it's easier said than done, because every single day, 3 to 4 hours after a full day's work, right? And over the weekends, just being 100% focused on exam preparation And your goal, even though you were rushing on the surface with this process, but and when I onboarded you, we did our one-on-one Zoom call. Even then, I could tell that you want to get this exam done, but at the same time, you wanted to extract a good learning experience out of it. And it seems that now that you will have or already have P next to your name, one of the secondary or maybe even the primary benefits, it seems like, is that you feel more confident, right? You've let go that imposter syndrome. You are able to tell yourself that in a voice, right? That, I tackle these very convoluted, abstract, high intellectual level type of concepts, symmetrical components per unit. I know them inside out, fault analysis. I know the difference between single line to ground, line to line fault, unsymmetrical faults, symmetrical faults. Where does the square root 330 degrees come from? Why we don't have overcurrent protective devices activating on ungrounded systems when there is one fault, but why it results in the activation of ungrounded of the protective devices when we have double line to line or double line to ground fault. So those, I think that, and that's what I tell my students when they enroll in my program, and that's what I told you as well, if you remember, that this is a final filter they're applying before they hand you the P license. And with great powers come great responsibilities, right? You essentially can design stuff that will be built without any question for the most part, right? And essentially, you're going to be interacting with the public because the state will be giving you that privilege, right? So they need to do a good job, and they do a pretty good job with these exams in terms of applying that filter. And they automatically will sort out folks who have put in the time and effort and are able to display their competency. But if you look at it positively, that, hey, I've been out of school for 4 or 5 years, 10, 15 years in some cases, but this is my opportunity to really step back, absorb the content, and get the answers for the questions that always evaded me, right? That were always elusive, right? And that's the approach that helps you sort of sustain that high level of intensity, because you know that this is not a one and done thing. Okay, I'll pass, I'll get the PE and whatnot, but I'm accumulating a skill set and the confidence that will help me propel and move forward in my career with more confidence. So that's amazing, and you were able to do all of that, and that's what it's interesting in a very short period of time, right? So the support network you talked about, I think that's very important. The sacrifices you made, I think that is very important. And one other thing that is obvious to me, and I work with tons of students, is that you were dedicated, you were committed. And I flagged this to you initially when we did our Zoom call, and I told you that, Jesse, like, I've had students, you remember I told you I've had students who've passed this exam in 3 weeks, and you're actually one of them now. And I told you that it is possible, but exactly what you said, burning the candle at both ends. That's what you'd have to do. And my only request to you when you were pursuing this aggressive timeline was that please make an effort to utilize the course as close to 100% as possible, which you did. You came close to 90%. And I'm assuming the stuff that you left out was probably something that you were already confident with.
Yeah, it
So,
was like some of the substation
configurations
configurations, which
and
I have
protective
some
devices
experience
and
with.
stuff.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's not what I would like to sort of emphasize is that you getting this done in a short period of time is not an accident, right? It is very thoughtful and clear-minded approach with all the sacrifices and the trade-offs that you were willing to make and you made, right? And that's how you got this done. So I think that focus and the commitment level is super important, whether your timeline is 4 months or 4 weeks. When you have I have students who have been thinking about taking this exam, sign up for the program, and then for whatever reason, they don't pull the trigger on scheduling the exam, and then they re-enroll in the program. They have no doubt in the effectiveness of the resources, right? But it's just that level of commitment in terms of diving into it with a complete commitment, it just doesn't transpire, right? So sometimes it would take folks multiple months to get to a point where they have the momentum built in and the tailwind essentially to propel them forward, right? So I think that's very important. So how did the resources help you? Like you talked about percentage, you almost gamified it. It seems that you want to hit a certain percentage every day or every week. Like how was that helpful?
Yeah. So the one thing that I would credit a lot of the success, obviously, it comes down to a lot of just time spent and dedication to it. But I did do my best to stay very organized. So you provide a Excel spreadsheet of just all the different topics. Yes, even before I saw that tracker, or I saw that you sent the tracker, I'd started to make my own, to try and kind of keep myself on target, because it's hard to kind of keep, like, it's however many 18 things are not easily divisible by 23 or whatever it is, 26. um, so and also a lot of the lessons are, some of them are 10-minute lessons, some of them are 40-minute lessons, trying to so I was trying to do my best to say, like, okay, let's try to figure out a way to track progress by either percentage that it says percent complete on the top left corner of the course page, or number of topics that I have left to cover. And so I tried to really use the tracker that you gave me quite religiously, almost to my own detriment sometimes, because I'd look at it and be like, I'm behind. But try to use that as best I can. I also used it as a place to track my progress in terms of practice problems. So adding additional column to say, like, okay, how am I doing on each of these concepts? So not only saying, like, do they feel good, easy, medium, or hard in the section, but also tracking that against, okay, when I actually tested myself on it, how did I do? Did I get my saying at kind of the 70, 80 plus percent that you want to be at, to kind of make sure you're feeling confident about, if I get this question on the test, how am I going to do? And you don't want to think about the PE exam of, like, okay, I'm really just trying to hit, whatever percent you think or will qualify as passing. I don't think they give a number for a reason, but you kind of think, like, oh, I'd like to be, if I'm feeling good about this, I want to be at the 80% level. Is kind of how I looked at it. It's like, if I get a couple hard ones on the test, I'll be able to A, know the content, and B, I can get a couple of them wrong and not feel like I'm completely overwhelmed. So tried to track both of those things really closely in my own records, so that I can both keep pace, and also identify where, on the last couple of days where you're really trying to make the last preparations, you don't really want to be learning new stuff on the last couple of days. You'd really rather be reviewing stuff that you either feel not very confident in, or really crystallizing key concepts or that sort of thing. So I use that to kind of inform my final couple of days of studying and say, all right, I need to look at more per unit power or something like that, then go back to those sections and do all the practice problems again, or review some of the lectures, and etc. So that was kind of my approach.
And especially when you are working with such a tight timeline, you have to be very efficient. And by staying organized and using the spreadsheet, the program tracker, and your own metrics, you're able to keep track of your strengths and weaknesses. And that's great. My last question to you is that while you were going through the exam preparation and the content and the explanations and the derivations and the deep dives and the conceptual corners, did you encounter aha moments? You're like, oh, that's what it is, right? Whether it was in some of the easier sections or the more difficult sections.
Yeah, honestly, I was. I guess I can go take that in a little bit of a. So when I was graduating college, I wasn't actually sure that I wanted to do like true engineering. I started in the operation and maintenance world. And part of it was because, like, I don't know if I don't know if this is for me, right? Like, you see all these other people and you think, like, oh, they're so, they clearly get this stuff way more than I got good grades, but it's like, but I'm just faking it. All those guys, they know what they're doing. And then I got through part of my the start of my career, and I was like, I think I kind of want to try the whole design engineering thing. I think it's something I'm kind of pulled towards. And there were times, actually, while I was doing this, where I did have the moments. It's like, that is, I do remember kind of like the elegance of some of these concepts, like when we're talking about rectifiers and three phase and all the different, like, half bridge or full bridge rectifiers, all that sort of thing. I felt like I got back some of those, like, oh, okay, yes, this is maybe not something that I didn't know, but it was something that I didn't fully appreciate without some of, like, the higher level conceptual understandings, and then kind of coming into that and like delta y trans or delta and y configurations had always kind of been not a black box. Like I knew kind of how to work with them in my professional life, but not always fully grasping the why. No pun intended, I suppose. But the those are the items that I felt like both transformer configurations just really getting nailed in, and then just some of the others just like having an appreciation for like how these like symmetrical components, for instance,
Yeah,
like
that's
the
very
tree,
abstract. That is very
a very
abstract.
abstract concept that are it is solved relatively elegantly through like just cool math, and that was something I was like, yes, I appreciate this. I'm feeling back.
And what about the derivations, like for fault analysis, like going into the nitty gritty detail, doing the full blown Thevenin analysis for three phase symmetrical fault, and then using the sequence components and deriving SLGs, DLL?
Yeah, I gotta be honest. When I would get to those points in the course, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like as I saw that they were like long videos, like I know I should watch this, and I did, and I did watch them all. I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to like keep getting through this, but it ended up being really good because I think fault current analysis was one that is both very relevant to my day to day, and also I think an area where a lot of engineers consider them like they consider that they know the concept, but they don't really know.
It's very deceptive.
It's very deceptive, right? It's easy to think that like, oh, there's three phase single line, whatever. I know how those work. It has some interactions with delta transformers, and that's about it. And not like you have to think about it more. But the whole going through all those and really, I've even had like even in my own experience, people talk about like how zero like positive sequence, negative sequence stuff. It's like that's pretty in the weeds. It's like no, it's very relevant. Like you really do need to understand that information to have a really good understanding of fault analysis. So those deep dives were though long and like complicated,
And
were really
torturous.
useful. Torturous, absolutely. You said it, not me.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that I would say very useful, especially just in terms of like getting the concept to click for you. I think is a big moment. Like as you're going through, you really want there to be a point where you just feel like you see a problem and you know how to address it. And going through like the big complicated thing is useful for making the individual thing easier, I think, right? Seeing all of the derivations then makes it seem like, okay, well, I have this equation, but I know why I'm using this equation. And if I see the equation a different way, like it is represented differently in the PE Power Handbook with respect to like the fault impedance itself, then you kind of say like, oh, okay, I see how that's different.
And all of that, if we take a step back, several steps back, all of the or most of the abstract concepts, they actually go back to one particular design feature or configuration or element in power systems. And this is not to quiz you, right? But it is grounding, right? Grounding is such an easy to understand or seemingly easy to understand, visualize that, okay, you just take it and you ground the neutral or the equipment to the grid. But it has so far reaching implications in terms of protection system, in terms of fault analysis, sequence components. And when we are doing those derivations, remember the 3ZF, we are always talking about how do you handle the 3ZF, whether it's going to be on one phase or on all the phases, right? And then we look at the math and we see, okay, where it is basically coming from, look at the sequence diagrams, and then we basically see that, okay, ZF belongs to the positive sequence, right? When it belongs to the positive sequence, you do a 3ZF and all of that stuff. But how everything comes together in section number 4 is probably the best part in the P power exam preparation, because at that point, things start clicking, right? So thanks a lot for your time, Jesse. Really appreciate it. And I'm glad to see that you got it done in a short period of time. It's possible, but you did not take shortcuts. That's the key message. 25, 26, 27 days, however many days you prepared for, you did not take shortcut and you put in your heart and soul into this project and got the result. So many congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for your support on this as well, because it definitely was very much appreciated to know at a minimum there was kind of like people I could talk to or have some sort of. I had some coworkers who I could maybe ask questions to, but to have people actually like dedicated towards my success was also very very useful. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that. My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Wasim.
If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. On a weekly basis, I'm creating content for FE electrical and PE power exam preparation. I also discuss topics related to electrical engineering with a focus on power systems engineering. If you'd like to learn more about my FE electrical and PE power exam preparation programs, please visit my website, studyforfe.com.